Hello, guys. Welcome to the webinar on getting into top business schools around the world. I have a great group with me, and I'm very much looking forward to the discussion. First of all, before we jump into the conversation, I want to introduce the group members over here, and we'll get the discussion going. If you have any questions, by the way, we already shared the link where you should go ahead put in your questions. Please do put in those questions, or you can ask your questions in the comments as well if you're comfortable. So let's have a quick round of introductions. Professor, why don't you please go ahead?
Hello, everyone. My name is Giulio Buccioni. I'm a professor in the Business School of Trinity College Dublin. I teach entrepreneurship in the MBA program there, both in the full-time MBA and the executive MBA. I'm also the director of a Master in Entrepreneurship and Innovation that I've been leading for 5 years now.
Thank you, Professor. Archana, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here. I'm a second year Wharton MBA. Before Wharton, did a bunch of things, started my life, consulting life with Bain, and then moved into investing. So I was doing edtech and consumer tech investing in Southeast Asia and East Africa. And now I'm pivoting to product management. So I'm going to be with Amazon for school. But excited to hear your questions and answer them.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Archana. Hope the last semester is going well for you without too much of like focus on studies.
Just emotional, just really emotional, but it's going well.
Yes. Yes. Aditya, please go ahead.
Yep. Hi, everyone. My name is Aditya. I graduated out of Stanford GSB in 2019. Prior to that, I did my double masters in engineering from MIT as well. I did my engineering from India. Then I was at IBM. Then I had my own startup that I built and sold. Spent some time doing my MS studies in the US, post which I did PE ops in India, Germany, and Japan. And then I went to business school, spent some time in venture capital, and then I was in product management. So I've done a bunch of things, and including a startup in between that I built and sold and existed. Yeah. So that's
awesome.
me.
Thanks,
Nice
Aditya. Thank you. Hey, Guru, please go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, hi, everyone. A warm welcome. So myself, Guru Rajan. You can call me as Guru. So I'm an analytics consultant. I have close to 10 plus years of experience. I have written books on analytics and have mentored a lot of data science professionals. I have designed courses for edtech companies like Analytics Vidya, Antwork, and others. So that's about me in a nutshell. Happy to be here, a part of the session here.
Thank you. Thanks, Guru. Thank you. So, guys, heavily, super packed on the accomplishments front from this group. But let me just introduce myself as well, probably for the folks who do not know my background. So, just to start off, I did not go to an IIT. I went to NIT Rourkela. I studied metallurgical engineering. After that, I started with Accenture. Probably it was like, Accenture came on a truck to NIT Rourkela. They hired probably 100 folks on day one. I was very, very afraid to even go to day two. So I was sitting on the truck, and then I moved to Accenture. Then I moved to a startup after that, Musigma in the analytics space, same like Guru, worked out very well. And after that, I moved into McKinsey based on my experience, and subsequently into INSEAD, and then now working with Professor Giulio and this great bunch on Blue Chapter. Very, very excited. So just wanted to remind you that, hey, doesn't matter where you come from, we can still go a long way. Now, Guru, if you can please bring up the screen, I'll just go ahead and introduce what and how we are going to discuss the next few minutes. Okay, so you're bringing the presentation, Guru?
Hey, Pawan, yes, just give me a minute. I'll do that.
Okay. Or I can do that if easy. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, Pawan. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right. So, guys, so the first major question is, if you are looking to get into a business school, uh, then my thought process, I would, of course, would love to hear the opinions from the entire group over here, as well as the where do we start our journey, right? And as I'm talking about initially from where I came, like I came from NIT Rourkela, then I was working with Accenture, then your background necessarily does not define where you need to get to. So please take that out of your mind. Everybody that, hey, I did not go to an IIT, or I went to an IIT, or I'm not working with a tier one institute, tier one company. So are my chances going to go down? Let's start with like everything in your life matters for these admissions officers. Absolutely. No questions about that. But the point is, we can do some things if we have time, and we can change the perception of these admissions officers as well. So that's the premise that we are going to look into. Please do not say that, hey, I am not coming from an IIT, so I do not have any chance. You are basically listening to somebody who is also not from an IIT, but still started with Accenture and then still went ahead to do some interesting things because of like, hey, it is possible. That's where I want to start. Now, the first question I want to ask, let's say, Archana, who is the current student. Now, Archana, you see in your classroom right now, do you see folks coming in only from IITs, or do you see folks coming from different backgrounds? And what are some of these things that these guys did previously?
Yeah, sure. First of all, just to clarify, I'm not an engineer either. I did not do IIT either. I've actually studied at SRCC, so I majored in finance. And while it's, while you would see a huge chunk of IITians in the class, they're not the only ones who make it. So just clarifying again and, echoing whatever you mentioned, Pavan. What I've also noticed is that people with really, really interesting and very niche backgrounds make it to the class and make it to the school. And few examples that I can give you, there are a bunch of people who've actually led their own startups, failed, some of them succeeded, some of them failed, and have a ton of entrepreneurial experience. So very unconventional background, so to speak. There are a lot of other people that I know of who actually did like early stage investing, just like I did, and a lot of them did impact investing as well. So a lot of folks from like previous finance background. There's of course like a few people from consulting background as well, who did not have the IIT degree, or who did not necessarily go to the best schools, so to speak. So that's always there. And there are lots of people who actually did. I know of a lot of people who actually worked at Shell and who were, like doing work that no one can imagine, any of us doing. So lots of people who had very unconventional backgrounds, so to speak, who still made it. So I guess biggest insight from all of this was that I think as unique as you are very unique, and you can make it irrespective of having sort of that cookie cutter background, so to speak.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Now, as we continue to focus on, let's say, what does it take to at least set ourselves that, hey, it is possible versus not possible, and then jump into the discussion. The first point is pretty straightforward. You need not be from the top university. You can still make it through some interesting work experiences. Now, it doesn't mean that, hey, your academics is like, hey, you throw your academics out of the window. I'm a 5-pointer. I can still get into Stanford, Wharton, every single top university out there, right? That is, again, I don't think that is possible, right? You can't say that, hey, I'm a 5-pointer. I do not have any kind of academic XP, or I'm not good with academics, but I will get into it. I don't think that works as well. What works is, as a bucket, you need to show your academic capabilities. And that bucket could mean, hey, you have a high GPA, you come from a great college, or you have a great GRE or GMAT, right? So one of those things should come in. Aditya, you mentioned you have supported a lot of folks. Did you notice this kind of thing happening right now?
Yeah, so that's a good point, Pawan. I think there are three aspects to this, right? One is, I think you're alluding to the point of like a holistic profile, right? Where One of the elements of a holistic profile is to have a good GRE or a GMAT score, right? But that's just one factor. The other factors, obviously, like like in the previous screen that Guru was sharing, you're looking at a very good work experience, right? And you're not looking at just quantity, you're looking at a quality work experience, and that could help you differentiate yourself from every other student, right? So that's one big part. Apart from that, of course, it's your education background. You don't have to be necessarily from a top tier college, right? A university also looks at a context that you set, where you started from and where you have reached in X amount of time, right? So ideally what happens is, if you look at somebody's profile, you can see where they started from point A to point B. Apart from that, you have factors like a GRE GMAT, a GPA. A lot of times I've worked with people whose GPAs are not very good, right? But they have very good GRE GMAT scores, right? And there are rational and there are reasons why GPAs have not been high. I remember working with a person who was from Indonesia. He was a student union leader, right? His GPA was not very high, but his GMAT was off the roof, right? And I think one of the things that what I worked on was, we both worked together and we managed to take out that essence where, okay, I was a student union leader during my college. These are the activities that I did, and this is what I cared for, right? I did not care for a GPA. I was very hands on, very practical, on the ground, right? And he managed to get into MIT Sloan. He was waitlisted at a bunch of other universities, so he got admits from top. He ended up joining MIT Sloan, and he pivoted completely to entrepreneurship, right? And just to context, he was a person who was like at the RBI equivalent in Indonesia, right? So what you're alluding to is literally a holistic profile. But yes, a GRE GMAT is important, but it's not
The only
everything.
one.
Right.
Yep, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So, guys, so the first bucket is pretty straightforward in terms of academics carries relevance, but it is not just enough. We have other buckets as well, which we need to look into. The first one, pretty clear: top college, GRE, GMAT. One of these things, either your CGPA, one of these things does matter. And then subsequently, you need to say to the admissions committee that, hey, yes, I am checking off that box. The academics box is checked off. If not through CGPA, it's through GRE or GMAT. That's number one. Now, the second thing you need to think about is, why MBA? Okay, I'm talking about this after academics for a reason, and I'm not starting this entire conversation with why MBA, because I'll tell you later why that is the case. But you need to start with why MBA in the context of, hey, I'm doing this MBA because I want to get here or get somewhere in my life. How many of you know for a fact that, hey, yes, you are doing this MBA to get to this particular job, this particular career path, this particular. So think about it for 10-15 seconds. And then let's start the conversation again. What do you want to do post your MBA? Do you know that? Let's take a quick 10-second pause. Now the reason why this is important is because, like, hey, why MBA is important? Because the work experience, the quality of work experience, the profile development, whatever you can write on your essays, the holistic nature of your profile, as what Aditya was saying, the holistic nature of the profile is evaluated based on why you want to do an MBA. It is not like, hey, Archana is doing MBA for the same reason as Aditya or me or Guru or any of us, right? All of us have different reasons, and you need to know that reason, because tactically, let's forget for a second that, hey, Professor Julio is here in this room for a second, but we have to say something to the admissions officer, convincing that, hey, yes, this is the reason that I'm doing this MBA. Whether we get there or not, that's a secondary question. Once we go to an actual MBA, then we can think about, hey, yes, this still works for me or not. But for you, it's important why MBA, because if you are, let's say, currently a politician, okay, I'm taking some random example here. Imagine you're a politician and you say that, hey, I want to become, or I want to work in management consulting, or I want to become an investment banker post my MBA. Possible? Absolutely possible. Anything is possible, right? But is it really probable? No, investment banking firms would love for somebody to have that prior experience if they want to hire them, some kind of experience. So if you write that story on your profile and say that, hey, I'm a great politician and I want to transition into investment banking, would the admissions officers believe your story? What do you guys think? Archana, do you think admissions officers will believe this transition stories without connecting A to B? Very, very difficult, right? It's very difficult to believe these stories.
Yeah. And in
I'll
fact,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, just to add, one of the things that I struggled with, or even when someone comes up to me and asks me this question, is if you can't walk the talk, the admission officer is going to be able to tell. Like if you're trying to make a huge leap without actually having done anything towards the eventual goal, then they know you're bluffing, because it's hard. It's hard to transition. So yeah, there's a lot of thought that needs to go into these transition stories as well.
Yes, yes, exactly. So I'll just take again a pause here, and I'll just go back into. I'll just go back and present my screen here once again. Okay, so it is pretty obvious where you want to be after your MBA should determine, as what Archana is rightly saying, that hey, you need to walk the talk of basically what you are writing in your resume or what you are writing in your essays. And how do you walk the talk is precisely your profile development. Let me repeat that again, guys. I hope you take some notes out of this session. Profile development is nothing but walking the talk of like, hey, I want to get here. I'm here right now, and I'm going through this journey, and I'm going from A to B, and I'm building that bridge, and that bridge is profile development. You might say, hey, Pawan, this is like, you are not even giving any actionable advice. It is tough for me to give actionable advice because that bridge that you need to cross is different from the bridge that I need to cross. Now, what we will do for the next 5 to 10 minutes is discuss a few examples on how each one of us can cross those bridges. So let's start with Aditya, and then I'll move into Guru. Aditya, have you seen people how they have developed their profiles? Any examples?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Pawan. So I think there are a couple of trends, right? Like I'm just going to call it at large trends. Generally, what happens is you're looking to go from point A to point B, and you want to basically show to the admissions committee or the admissions director or the admissions team that my business school experience is going to help me move from A to B. And when I say A to B, you're looking at stuff like, a lot of people are alluding that in the chat also, that they want to go to strategy consulting, they want to go to PEVC, or they want to go to any top tier company, right? So, or product management, for example, like what Archana is looking at. Now the thing is that from going from point A to point B, you're talking to somebody who's an expert. Admissions committees and admissions teams have been doing this for the last X number of years, right? So you can't bluff. Obviously, you need to start showing that, okay, you're building competency towards that. So what I have seen, and this is, I guess, the main prelude, that if you work a little earlier towards your profile, right? If you start spending and showing the admission committee that you started working. For example, I'll go back to the example that I had with my one of my clients that I work from Indonesia. So this person's background was in hardcore finance. This person did what do you call investment banking. He was in PE. Then he went into making it into an RBI equivalent at the Indonesian bank. So he was there for a very long time, and and his eventual goal. We spent a lot of time. His eventual goal was not to do finance. His eventual goal was to do entrepreneurship, right? And he basically was like, this is what I want to do in life, but I'm very clear I want to do, like, let's say he wanted to do something in agriculture. And I asked him that, is there a rationale here, right? So after a lot of sessions of figuring out what area of a startup that he wants to work in or domain focus, we reached SME, small medium finance banking, right? And this completely sits with his experience, right? So I asked him that, we spent some time. He found out that at his workplace, there was this possibility of him taking like 3 months to 6 months off working on his own startup idea, right? And that's where the encouragement, I mean, we spent some time, me and him worked on a business plan. We were like, okay, why don't you look at this as an option? So he spent 6 months working on a startup idea. And during the same time, he applied for business school. And, he got into everything. Like literally, when I say everything, all M7 schools, he got into all universities.
Now,
Eventually,
Aditya, one question I have. If his work wouldn't have permitted him to take off those 6 months,
yeah.
right? What could he do?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because he actually did not take out the entire 6 months. He spent the first 2 months working on the startup, saying, that I need to work on this. He went on a 1 month vacation, added another 1 month, right? And the next 3-4 months, he was still working at his RBI equivalent, right? But the point is that he, for 6 months solid, showed that, okay, I started from here, went here, built this. Now on the ground, I've done XYZ. I've hired people, got some interns, got an idea of what's actually happening on ground, and he started building it, right?
Got it.
And it was very interesting where, and he had applied. So just for context, he had applied to business schools a year earlier, right? And unfortunately, he didn't get top tier admits a year earlier. So he said that, okay, I would rather see if I can get some expertise and some help. And eventually, so I'm just giving you an example where point A to point B, you start
Transitions
working
can
towards
happen.
certain goals, right? That's one example. The other example is, for example, there are a lot of people who want to get into PE, VC. I did the same thing. I went into venture capital. I was at Lightspeed for some time. So how does one go from point A to point B? It's interesting where, whatever work somebody does right now, they already have that area of expertise. Let's say, if you're in ed tech, or let's say if you're doing product management, or if you're doing entrepreneurship, you end up gaining a lot of domain experience, right? You can, let's say, as a part of you, the best way of looking at this is go ahead, see the role that you want to do, and you see how can I help an existing. So venture capital, you basically invest in other startups, right? So you invest in other startups, you help other startups in different areas, right? So one option is you can go down the path of actually going and helping with portfolio companies, right? So I've actually had this case where somebody wanted to pivot into venture capital, but they wanted to pivot into the impact investing, or not the traditional VC space, right? And how did they go down about that part is, this was a clear case where somebody who, was working already at a large company, right? A large company, and then they wanted to do VC, but they wanted to do non-traditional, more of the agri-tech or the agri-focused industry. So ended up happening where, they worked with a couple of people on ground, and eventually they showed that for 6 months on the resume, saying that, okay, part-time I've been working on these. I myself have been building this, right? And during business school, they purposely found an internship in that area. Post business school, they went to a focus just like that. So just a couple of examples, right?
Yep.
But it goes back to the same point, Pawan, that you made, right? That ideas that you go from point A to point B, the business school, the MBA experience should help you pivot. But in the process, you want to show prior to the school's start date that, okay, this is how I have, worked in this area or this industry, gained that experience, just as a prelude to, okay, what I can do next.
So just to play the devil's advocate over here, these things are difficult.
Yes.
These things say starting a company while I'm working full time is difficult because I can't risk my job even for a month. Forget about a month. I can't risk that thing. I can't go and ask my boss, I need a week off or a month off, right? Similarly, I can't ask. I'm working for 12 hours a day, probably 6 to 7 days. Then how do I go about any of these things? For example, Guru, you have experience in analytics. If somebody is starting with analytics, like for me, I started off as an analytics guy, and then I moved into management consulting eventually. What are some of the ways in which you can say somebody can improve their profile in the analytics space, not by going and starting a company? Any other themes that you can refer to?
Yeah, I could say this, right? I would say like start with some basic concepts. Go through them. Take up a project. Build something that you can showcase the world, to tell the world that you know what you're doing. Say, for example, let's take during the COVID time, right? So there was a lot of people who took the COVID data. They did some sort of exploration over there. They came up with some sort of insights that a lot of people didn't see. They oversaw that. You know? So they went inside the data, gave some very good insights, and showcased their work to the world. So that's one of the really good ways you can tell the world that, hey, I know this. You know,
Yes,
before quitting the job or doing anything, right? You need to tell the world that you know this. You need to build a portfolio. You need to spend some time.
absolutely, guys. So let's be honest here. Getting into a business school, top tier business school, is not easy. These might sound like a this is tough. Like I can't go start a company. I can't support startups on a weekend. I have my job. I need to go do my job every single day. I can't do a personal project. Then you have to reprioritize stuff. You need to do these things. You need to at least do a few of these things to realistically target a good B school to start with. I'll share a few more examples on what this profile development would look like. But Professor Julio, why don't you tell us? Because Ireland is also now becoming an increasingly important destination because it is one of the few countries in the world where English is the language, official language. So, what are your thoughts on how you evaluate applicants?
Yeah, thank you, Pavan. Let me first say that certainly Ireland is benefiting from Brexit, simply put, and we're already witnessing a growing number of applications as a result of people relocating right from the UK to Ireland. We remain the only English-speaking country in Europe and a bridge between the east of the world and America and the west of the world in many ways. Um, I am part of the supply side, right? I'm part of the MBAs. I'm part of the schools. I'm part of those who select students who will join us or not. And let me tell you a little bit about the mechanics. There's no algorithm that decides who is in, who is out. These are people. People like me meet, sit down, and decide. Pavan is in, Archa is in, Aditya is in, Rosie is in or out. So it's very important to do few things. It's very important to understand the MBA program and the school. Spend time researching the professor teaching in the school. Who is the director of that program? What does he like? What does he not like? What is that does he research on? Because at the end of the day, it will be one or two people sitting down in front of your application deciding this person will fit the program or will not fit the program. So it's all good what you said. You need to have all your scores in place. You need to have a strong experience. You need to have a very compelling story to tell. But to me, a missing piece that I haven't heard so far is understanding uh, the features of the schools you want to join, understand their story, understand their strategy, and understand what people who call the shot do on a regular basis. As a director of a program who has the responsibility of deciding who is in, who is out, I very much look for this type of insights through the application of future students.
Interesting, interesting. Thank you. Sorry, we missed out on that point, all of us, but I think that's
Oh
important
no,
to
but
know.
that may be my role.
Yes. Now, one other element that I want to add into the profile development so far, guys, if I believe or I hope you guys are taking some notes. Please do take down some notes. I'm going to just summarize the conversation so far. Once again, please take down notes. Number one is academics is important. Please don't throw it out of the window. But hey, I'm an entrepreneur. I still don't care about my academics. No, right? Unless you are like the founder of Oyo or like a big billion or a decacorn company, academics still matter. So if it is not CGPA, it is through GMAT or GRE or some other ways. That's number one. The second thing, profile development literally means you are going from where you are right now, and you say that hey, my goal of doing an MBA is to get to PVC consulting or entrepreneurship, whatever, and you are basically doing some things over the next 6 months, 1 year to get to that point, right? That is profile development, and that for in the case Aditya mentioned that it's hey, you are going and let's say working on a side project, or let's say you're working as an entrepreneur or you're building your own thing, as what Guru is saying, develop a side project. Or I can give one more example. Entrepreneurship is one theme. The second theme that I want to also highlight is you have to be involved and say to the admissions officer out loud that hey, I am also a guy who can support multiple people in my classroom. Now, the importance of volunteering, social work. Let's not put it any other way. Let me be very honest. People are doing that stuff just to get in. So the value of that work itself, your social work, is going down drastically. But still, you can say that, hey, I did social work in the relevant space. Let me give you a quick example. I was working with a candidate who was in a software role with 4 or 5 years experience. He was working for a bank in the software department. And he said, I want to become an investment banker. I at least know a bit about the financial services industry. So he worked with a startup and he was helping them raise some funding, as what Aditya was saying. Alternatively, on the other hand, he was also building out Java classes on YouTube. He was giving out Java lectures. He was giving out like C, C++, Python, all these lectures just to share, just to basically reinforce the belief that, hey, yes, he supports the community as well. So the team four that I want you to highlight is like, hey, some work in your entire application should highlight, hey, you are a person who can support the community. And if that adds up to your transition story, nothing like that. If not, it is fine. But if it adds up to the transition story, fantastic. Right? Archana, any other themes that you want to highlight?
Yeah, I think I mean, just building on the last point that you've made about, adding back to the community. I think anything that you do, even if it's not, um, for instance, I can talk a little bit about my own experience, right? I eventually want to set up my own investment fund, and that was sort of the goal that I had been very set on for a really long time. Now, if I had gone ahead and mentioned that with just consulting experience, no one would have bought it, because how am I gonna, like gather all the resources that I need? I don't even understand the finances of it. I don't understand like the different components needed to set up a fund. What I did was take a small step towards, trying to get a VC gig to understand how it really works, how are funds managed, how are funds actually, how do people raise money, how is the investment supposed to happen? So even though it wasn't exactly what I intended to do in the long run, it was a step towards what I would eventually end up doing, or a step in sort of clarifying my overall goal. So, what I'm essentially implying is you don't have to, if you want to be a product manager, you don't necessarily need to do PM gig right before school in order to sell the dream to the school. Just do something that's adjacent enough that it gives people belief that you can get there. Yeah, so that's the only thing that I wanted to add, but the themes that you've identified make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So just to before we continue into the next segment, just want to highlight that, guys, doesn't matter if you come from pharmacy background, doesn't matter if you are a high school teacher, or you are coming from military, or you are coming from, your background doesn't really matter as much, as long as you are saying that, hey, I'm connecting the dots, I want to do these things after my MBA. I'm here right now, but I'm already bridging that gap. As what Aditya said, 6 months been working on this. You can't say that, hey, next month is my application deadline, and I'll start building my profile from today. That doesn't work. You need to give yourself some time. So you can't pressurize yourself, nor your applications consultant, anybody. You can't do that at all before like 1 month. And that is where a lot of us fail. Let me be very, very clear. We don't give ourselves enough time to succeed. And that is the biggest problem in this entire space. If we give ourselves good enough of time, like, and strategize, and rather than just doing, if we strategize appropriately, we can get there, and there are high chances. Now, is it important for me? Is it important? It is. You need to know that question. What do I want to do after your MBA? And if you have an answer for that question, then subsequently profile development becomes very, very easy. Now, I just also want to focus on a few other things. Absolutely, a lot of questions around timelines. 2 years, 10 years, 15 years experience. Can I go get my MBA? Now, Archana, in your class, can you tell me, like, hey, what is the least experience that you have seen and the most experience that you have seen, specifically for Indian candidates?
Yeah, specifically for Indian candidates, honestly, the least experience is about 4 years or 3.5 to 4 years. That's kind of what I've seen. And the max experience I've also seen for Indian candidates is not more than 7.5 to 8 years.
7.5,
In
8
this,
years.
yeah, 8 years in this specific class.
Okay.
I have my own opinions about why it doesn't make sense to do this MBA when you have 9 years of experience, because there's one question that's been posed, but I can get to that in a bit.
Okay. So just to add a little bit of caveat, American MBAs, the average age is lower compared to European MBAs. In my class at INSEAD, the lowest experience that I saw was with 3 years work experience, and the highest I saw was somebody with like 13 to 14 years experience as well. 14 years experience roughly. And I'm talking about Indians specifically. I saw somebody getting started with their MBA at 35. So, uh, Aditya, what about your class? What was the lower and the higher limits?
Yeah, so I think one is that Stanford's median is about between 4 to 5 years of experience. So you will find most of the candidates around 4 years or 5 years of experience in general, right? Within the Indian community, yes, it was between 4 years to about 6 years, somewhere in between. I haven't seen anybody with more than 6.5, 7 years of experience. But outside that, I've seen people with about 15 years experience. I've seen people with no experience, straight out of school, right? So you'll find the entire range, but again, the median is between 4 and 5.
Yeah,
And this is for US universities. So,
yeah,
like,
the median for INSEAD was 7.5 years. So you can see I started my MBA with 7.5 years experience, and that was the average age of my class. So you can see there was like people with 10 years, 11 years experience on average. And there is a reason for this as well, guys, because in undergrad in US is 4 years, whereas undergrad in UK and Europe is 3 years. So people tend to do a master's immediately after their undergrad in European countries, and then they take a long time once again to get back to their MBA. So it makes sense for them to get back to the additional second degree after 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 10 years. But in the US context, people are not doing a second degree. This is their first degree after undergrad. So it makes a lot of sense from a geographical standpoint. So uh, I can give you some references. I don't think I should take out names here, but I have seen people with 10 years, 12 years experience getting into Booth and a few other good universities as well. So now, before we jump in, Professor Giulio, any thoughts from you? How do you look at experience?
It's not simply a matter of the years of experience. I can certainly echo what Archa and Aditya were saying. It varies the number of years. There's a minimum threshold that I would also think in the range of 4 or 5 years. For us, it's 7.5. Again, we are in European business school. But what we are getting more and more interested in is the variety of your experience. So it's becoming more and more common for top MBAs to hire students who don't have a business background, who have backgrounds in philosophy, who have background in social sciences. It's becoming more a matter of, are we creating variety, heterogeneity in the class? Are we creating a context that can really propel innovation in the broader and most noble sense? So do something distinctive. Show that you are uh, tackling timely issues in the world. Like do social activities. Be concerned with sustainability. All schools are going there. You need to be contemporary. Also, in what concerns your experiences, not just the sheer number of years. It's what's the richness you're bringing to the class. Our goal is to make sure that the experience for the entire class is as best as possible, and the experience, 50% of it comes from the mix of people in the class.
Awesome. Thank you. So now, guys, let's quickly jump back into one more topic, and then we go back into scholarships. So let me just continue with the conversation and we'll circle back on scholarships. Aditya and Archana would love to hear your perspectives. But now I just want to highlight what we do as individuals, right? And where potentially we can support you. If you are interested, uh, I hope the session is giving you some insights on how you can go ahead and build your profile across multiple themes, right? This, first of all, is not like a standardized, like, hey, this is the thing that works for 100 people. No, there is no solution like that, unfortunately. It has to be personalized, and that is where the issue is. If you expect an actionable insight for you, it has to be a one-on-one discussion. It has to be a one-on-one support for a very, very long time, right? Otherwise, insight that you can take and you can basically work on it over the next few months by yourself or few years, and that should be helpful too. With a 4-year experience, 6 years, even 8-year experience, it should be a good thing. Now, where do we come in? So there are two angles to how we support individuals. Number one is in a group setup. So we take groups of individuals who are primarily interested in consulting. That's one angle. And we give them a story sheet and say that, hey, why don't you fill that story sheet? And we'll have one-on-one conversation where we'll support what is the way in which you can go ahead and build your profile. We'll come through some live, interesting potential ideas, and you go ahead and build it. Okay, your profile that way. And then we'll have a cohort-based live sessions, 10 hours of sessions where we'll help you. Hey, what does it mean by application writing? Folks like Archana, folks like Guru, they come in, they talk about their own experiences of how you can do well or how you can tweak your story better, so on and so forth. So 10 sessions around which colleges to choose, why these colleges, scholarships, then subsequently how to write these essays and how to present the best version of yourself in front of the admissions committee. And the third thing within the Global MBA Fellow program that we do is an international project where you work in a cohort of 20 people and then you do the project with respect to an SMB from Europe, where Professor Giulio and I will lead the project and will support you in finally going and doing that project. Of course, it is all online, but live. And that is a great talking point in your resume, in your interviews, and your basic essays. And we just got a note from today from one of the folks who got an MBA admit that, hey, this was in fact one of the conversations that they had regarding their interview. So we have been hearing these great stories. So we know how this could be a great talking point and that bridge for you if you want to get into the consulting world. Now, on top of that, that's the Global MBA Fellow program. If you are interested, you can go to bluechapter.com or you can write to us info@bluechapter and you can go ahead and there is a Global MBA Fellow tab. You can go ahead and fill in that sheet. And in that sheet, you have also an option for personalized mentoring. Now, what does personalized mentoring mean? Personalized mentoring is important in this entire angle of getting into an MBA because, as I already mentioned, there are no cookie cutter solutions. Even if you want it, there is nobody who is manufacturing these cookie cutter solutions. If there was one, who would be the first person to know that? Admissions officers. They will know these cookie cutter solutions and they'll discard all these cookie cutter solutions from day one. Right? So these solutions are something that should work for you. And also the solutions should be built around your own constraints. Not everybody can leave their job. Not everybody can go and find a startup. If your LinkedIn profile, if you do not have too many contacts, how will you go ahead and find that side project? How do you know that you will have? So there is a lot of constraints that we are working with respect to time, with respect to resources, with respect to where you want to get there and do we know how to get there. So in that scenario, what the personalized one-on-one support objective is that, hey, depending on where you want to go and where you are, one of us will guide you throughout your next 6 to 8 months. If you are saying you're applying for next 1 month, good luck, but this is not the right platform for you. But if you are saying that, hey, I'm giving myself another 6 to 8 months, at least for 2024, 2025 cycles are even better. You come back to us, fill out the form and say that, hey, I'm interested in getting personalized mentorship from you guys. And that support is critical because we believe on a weekly basis, we keep tweaking how you can improve your profile based on the constraints that you are working with. Well, your constraints are different from my constraints, guys. My constraint is like, how do I create a nice background for my YouTube videos? And how do I come up with like a compelling content, right? But if you do not have time, your constraints are different, right? You cannot leave a job. And that has to be something which helps you get to that point A to point B. And as what Aditya is saying, it's even important that, hey, a lot of you might not even know why MBA. Right? It's a $200,000 decision, right? You are spending 1.5 crore and the exchange rates are going off the roofs. So I don't know, next time we speak, that number might be even higher. So we don't even know that, right? So this is an important decision. $200,000, you are about to spend 1.5 crore or 2 crores, whatever that number is as of today, we don't know. But if you are spending that amount of money, you need to know what you are getting out of it. And you cannot say that, hey, it's okay for me to go do MBA without even knowing what I want. I want to explore in my MBA. That answer doesn't work for the admissions officers. Unfortunately, even if it's the reality, let me just be brutally honest, that answer doesn't work for anybody. Right. So if you are interested in that personalized mentoring, I would highly recommend, if you have time. If you do not have time, if you are rushing, then I hope one of these solutions would work for you, whatever we discussed. But if you have time, think about it, sleep over it, and then see, hey, would it make sense for me if I want to get into product management, consulting, investing, or analytics background is what I have. How do I show my profile? Different options, think through it and get back to us. You can write an email at info@bluechapter.com. On all of my YouTube videos, you will find the links. Go check it out. Now, the next thing that I want to add before taking a few more questions is, of course, scholarships. Right? Aditya, any insights on how can somebody maximize their chance for getting a scholarship? I'm curious.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So just for setting some context, I was a Dhirubhai Ambani Reliance scholar at GSB, so it's a full scholarship for Stanford. Thanks for that. And also, both my MIT degrees were on full scholarship also. So I've gone through that experience of applying for scholarships and figuring out, how can somebody get scholarships to study at top institutions. So I think first and foremost, are there scholarships available? Yes, they are, right? The second part is, how does one apply to them? For example, I'm going to break this into 3 types of scholarships. And the first type is, there are scholarships that are available to everybody, right? That's one type. Second type of scholarships that are available only specifically to that university, right? And the third thing is that once you get admitted, right, the admission committee / the university themselves provide you with assistance, with financial aid, right? Like, for example, I'd applied to HBS, other universities as well. And the other universities, like, once I got an admit, I had a 50% scholarship. When I say 50%, what happens in that case is that the university gives you a grant, and not like an education grant, but more of like an award, which is a function of the funding. It's a function of, let's say, which industry you are in. Like, for example, there are awards that are given to people who come from life sciences specifically, right? So that can help you, to a large extent, take care of, let's say, close to 30%, 50%. In my case, it was 50%. So there are scholarships for that as well. So back to the 3 buckets. One is generic scholarships that people have. That's one. The second thing is university specific scholarships. And the third thing is, once you get admitted, you have scholarships that show up that, you can get assistance on. So one is that, you need to look for them. For generally in the MBA space, getting scholarships is not easy. It's much easier for MS universities, or it's much easier, like what Professor was mentioning, that, if you're applying to a university and you want to work with a professor, right, you want to help them in their research side, or they want to do a little bit of RA or TA, then there's a possibility of getting some assistance on that side, right? And I think that's also a big difference between European schools and US schools. In the US universities, you cannot apply for that unless until you're not applying for a PhD program, right? So back to the MBA part, so from a scholarship standpoint, these are a couple of examples. My suggestion there is, take a look at the university. You will find a lot of assistance programs. For example, Stanford has the Reliance program. There are a bunch of other scholarships also. HBS is similar. All top tier universities have this, right? That's one. The second thing is that, the other way of looking at this is, when you apply from India, there is these, it's called a non-interest program, right? Where, like, for example, I think Tata Trust has something, Mahindras have something. So all of the trusts today have assistance where, you don't have to pay the interest till you start working on that, right? So you're basically skipping the entire interest. So that's there. And within other ways of funding it, that, obviously, if you go through an Indian bank, you go through the collateral system, right? But there are now UK based banks that actually lend to Indians. Again, it's a function of which university you get into, which are non-collateralized, so you don't have to put in a collateral, right? And again, you start only paying back the loan once you actually start working, right? So within that also, I have a lot of friends who use that system, and what happens there is that you have an option. You have an option that, okay, you're not going to pay during your MBA. The second you start working, you have an option to either get 6 months off or 1 year off, right? Depending on when you want to start paying back. So at least there are a lot of options out there, and people use a lot of them. And generally, what I've seen also is, if you just go back to the economics of loan, right? In the US, at least, once you start, you get a signing bonus. A lot of them use that towards their loan payments, right? Uh, Loan payments are also something that you can do from getting a tax break. You can use that for your tax break here, right? So the thing is that a lot of it is a function of, yes, you're investing in yourself, you're taking that risk. Are there systems that let you do that? Yes, you can go outside the university, you can go within the university. And most people, majority of the people, use this as a system, right? There is one additional system out there where, again, if you're already a part of MBB or any of the large companies today, the companies also self-sponsor, right? So you can like go to university, the company pays for you, but there's an obligation to go back, right? And I think it really depends from company to company. Certain companies have a 2-year obligation, certain companies have 3 years, certain companies have 5 years, depending on where the person comes from. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Aditya. That was pretty detailed. Archana, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, that was super comprehensive, Aditya, and congratulations on the Dubai Ambani scholarship. That's really hard to get. For context, only like one person every year gets it. It's a very big deal. Just the only thing that I want to add here is the amount of scholarship that you would get, even across the top tier schools, will differ drastically. For instance, Wharton doesn't give out more than 25 to 50% scholarships to most of their admitted candidates. It's just the economics of it doesn't make sense for them because they don't have that much funding. Whereas like Harvard or Stanford might be more open to giving out like larger, or even Kellogg for that matter, I've heard, and a bunch of other schools have larger endowment funds and they give out more scholarships. So something for you to research on beyond what Aditya has mentioned is check on what schools are more likely to give out scholarships. That's the only other thing that I want to add. Some schools are just not open to giving too much scholarship, but there are lots of other ways to fund your MBA, even if you do not get a ton of scholarship. And I think that's a conversation that could take another 20 minutes, honestly. Some of it Aditya covered, but even though it may seem daunting, 1.2 crores, but when you come in, there are lots of ways really to be able to, take care of the cost.
Yep. Also, guys, I would, since we are getting on to the hour mark, I would love each one of you guys to take at least one question. If you can go through the question links, I hope all of you have it, or I can send it to you. If you can just go through the question link and pick up one question, then guys can drop off prior commitments, and I can take a few more questions. But I don't know if I just dropped. I'm not sure if everybody knew. If you are following me on LinkedIn. I had dropped a post today with respect to scholarship for Indian students applying to INSEAD. So that was a funding run that INSEAD was doing, a donations campaign specifically to provide scholarships to Indian students. And every single year, they do these donation runs across the entire alumni base. And Indians contribute to the Indian Scholarship Fund, then Americans contribute to the American Scholarship Fund. And these funds are there to support students in need. So these things do happen for every single university. Okay, awesome. All right, so let's go with the first question. Anybody, Professor, if you want to take if you have the access to the questions, if you want to take one question.
Trying to read through. There's one question, I believe, Harinder. Is it possible to get good business school after 5 years gap? Well, certainly it is possible. I would reiterate a message that I've heard across all participants today. Planning is king. Planning is your best friend. Um, if 5 years gap means that you were not studied, that I believe it means that you were working, that's the gap, right? You're referring to, then I certainly believe that it's doable. If 5 years gap means that you do not do anything for 5 years, then the situation becomes way more challenging. But in general, I would go back to one message that I heard from several voices today. It's about planning, it's about understanding the school, it's about planning every step diligently and have a long-term plan. Long-term plan for me, it's a great thing when you apply for an MBA. All MBAs are different. If you want to become an entrepreneur, probably Babson is your school. Every school is trying to differentiate their MBA, so it really starts from you. That's my final message, really. And the schools are happy to talk to you. So if you have doubts, if you want to know how to land a scholarship, ask them. How could I get a scholarship from your institution? We are really there to talk to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Professor. Archana, I'll go with you next. You said you have a hard stop.
Yeah,
Why
thank
don't you go
you.
ahead?
So the other question that I had been reading and been hearing a lot about is how do I build spikes in my resume? Um, so again, I want to reiterate to everyone that it's not about trying to make yourself stand out in every single thing that you've done. What you should do is try and understand what is your long-term goal and work backwards to figure out sort of this cohesive manner in which you're operating to get to the long-term goal. And while you're doing so, the spikes that you can build out is, of course, if you're really passionate about something, you're going to do well, right? So it all fits in really well as long as you've done the introspection of figuring out what are you passionate about and walking backwards and next trying to connect the dots backward, as GSP also has one of those essays where you try to understand how can you get to that overall goal. And and while you're working towards something you're passionate, you're gonna do better than others anyway, and that's how you build out those spikes, in my opinion. But yeah, I would love to hear from others too on what they think.
Yep. Aditya, you go next. What is any question specifically?
Yeah, I can take the next one. Which elements of an application will increase chances of a scholarship? I think. I think again, it really depends on what is the audience for the scholarship. If it's an external team, then you're again looking at building literally an holistic profile to cater to the admissions team at the scholarship. Sorry, to cater to the admissions team at the scholarship folks, which is a completely different application compared to what you're putting in for business school. If you're applying to a business school and if the admission and if the scholarship comes from the business school, then you're looking at increasing your chances there. So they're totally different, two different ball games, right? In general, you're looking at, obviously you want to have a good story, which is important, but more than that, GRE, GMAT, your GPAs, all of that has to be stellar, right? You want to have really good experience because you need to not only differentiate yourself from, in the admission pool, you need to also differentiate yourself from the applicant pool, right? And many a times you'll find that scholarships are a lot more competitive than even admissions, right? So one really needs to spend time on perfect, and it's not going to be the same application. The scholarship application can be totally different from a business school application. And also when you're applying to universities, a lot of time when you're applying for financially aided universities, they ask you to fill up essays. They ask you to be like, what's your plans after business school, please elaborate, right? So that gives you an additional opportunity to showcase what you think and where you want to go, which can increase the chances of a scholarship. Again, it's holistic, has all the elements, and one really needs to look at that. Yep.
Thank you. Thanks, Aditya.
Yeah. I had just one thing, Pawan. The next question, which says global MBA with a lot of work experience. I just wanted, whoever has this, there are these courses out there which is called MSX courses, which are generally meant for people with a lot of work experience. These are executive MBA courses. I know that was not the theme for today's session, but people who generally have close to 10 to 15 years of experience, they generally look at, and this is for again US universities. I'm not explaining you about European universities, but MSX are, or basically they call that as Sloan Masters. That's something that could be useful for the candidate there. Just putting it out there. You can Google that. You'll find a lot of information. Help
Yeah,
solve this.
my only recommendation over there would be, folks, if you are interested in getting into executive MBA programs, do consider them, but caveat, see if they have strong placement support. If companies are coming to hire them, because again, a lot of investment, if your primary objective is to change a job, then make sure that you can change a job through that program. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense to spend so much money, right? Guru, yeah, why don't you go ahead? Any other question that you can take? Hey, Guru, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, I had to shift the screens,
Yeah.
So let me look at some of the questions that we have got in YouTube channel. I'll see if I can
Okay.
take any. So there's one question, right? So I have already done an MBA. Can I do another MBA? Okay. So this is something I think I have seen a lot. So especially people from India, right? They tend to do an MBA here, and they would also like to do an MBA abroad. So after some time, they feel that they're kind of stuck with the particular geography, and they want to diversify, and they end up doing an MBA. And I see that happening, and I don't see anything wrong in doing that. What would you add to it, Pawan? Like, what do you think?
So hey,
Is it a
from
good
my
move?
class, in my class at INSEAD, there were a lot of people who did MBAs in India, even from IIMs. They did
Yeah.
MBAs from IIM Lucknow. There was one guy from IIM K. I know two guys, my classmates, who have done from good IIMs, then coming over, and it is pretty common, at least at INSEAD, to have second MBA. So it is not uncommon. People do it at a rush. They just come out of undergrad, they want to do some MBA degree, quickly get in, do that MBA, and 5 years later they are like, hey, I didn't learn anything in my MBA. Now I want to go change geography. Should I do it? Absolutely. If you know what you want to do post MBA, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
I was sorry, I was just going to add to that, Pawan, that generally you'll have, like, I've also seen a lot of folks, who have done that. Generally it's a lot because of the fact that the IAM degrees in India is being positioned generally with somebody with 0 to 1 year experience, right? So a lot of folks, end up doing business school right after university, and I think by the time you put in 5 6 years, they're like, okay, inching towards a global MBA. And I think the focus for both the MBA programs are very different. The global MBA program is more of a global orientation, completely different skill sets that one looks at, versus an IIM degree is a lot more business education, more theoretical, more business focused in terms of just getting all the basics right? So it's a totally different, and I've seen this, like, for a lot of people, you are looking at now, okay, you want to get a global orientation, you want to see, by that time you have already decided a focus area, and hence you want to go deeper, or you want a global network, right? So there are a lot of reasons why people go for a global MBA, and like you said, right, there are a lot of people who do that, and it works very well for them. Yeah.
yep, absolutely. So guys, as parting thoughts, we have now spent 1 hour 5 minutes. Unfortunately, if we couldn't take all the questions, we will try to do it in the next conversation. But I just want to bring up one single screen once again and share what exactly and how, if you want to connect in the next steps. So let me tell you very clearly, guys. Uh, Personalized one-on-one mentorship, either it is coming from any of us guys that you see on the screen, or from Archana, who was with us. None of these personalized mentorships would work if we take 50 students, 60 students. Each one of us can take at max 5 students, 6 students. That's it. That is where our capacity ends to. We need to do a lot of other things. These guys are full-time working professionals, right? So it is not possible to get that full focus. So not more than 5 people. So if you are interested to get support from us on a full-time or like a personalized basis over the next 1 year, please go ahead, fill that form, on bluechapter.com. I have given the link in the comments. Please go ahead, fill that form, Blue Chapter Global MBA Fellow. And when you fill that form, please mention that, hey, you are interested in getting that personalized support as well. And then we'll come back to you. That is separate, by the way, guys. We charge basically for the Global MBA Fellowship Program, we charge approximately 42,000. And the personalized mentorship is completely different. It depends on whether we are not even putting a price to that right now, because it depends on, hey, whether Guru can take somebody, whether Professor can take somebody, when I can take somebody versus Aditya or Archana. They can take somebody and guide them, or do they have other commitments? We have absolutely no idea on, depending on the profile, can we help them versus not? A lot of questions come into the picture for us. So please go ahead, fill that form. As soon as we close for the first 5 to 10 guys, then we are closed. That's it. We have no other way to do it. Right? So that's where I want to end my thoughts. So please do go ahead, fill the form. On the Global MBA Fellow, you will have on all my YouTube videos that has the first link. Go ahead, fill that form. And if you are interested, you can drop a note at info@bluechapter.com as well, and we'll let you know if we can answer those queries. Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Guru. Thanks for joining us. And I hope
Thank you,
this
Pawan.
session,
Thank you all.
correct, Gautam, you
Thank you,
have to
Professor.
pay
Thank you, Pawan.
42K only if you are selected. Yes. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. And
Thank you, everyone.
we'll see you soon. Thank you so much for joining in, everybody. I hope this was a helpful session for you. Bye-bye.